Words of Joy and Hope. It is the 26th Sunday in Ordinary Time, year B,
Dal
and the
Vangelo
Gospel of
secondo
Mark, chapter 9, verse 38-50. And the commentary is by Father Fernando Armelini. At that time, John said to Jesus, "Teacher, we saw someone driving out demons in your name, and we tried to prevent him because he does not follow us." Jesus replied, "Do not prevent him. There is no one who performs a mighty deed in my name who can at the same time speak ill of me. For whoever is not against us is for us. Anyone who gives you a cup of water to drink because you belong to Christ, amen, I say to you, will surely not lose his reward. Whoever it causes one of these little ones to believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a great millstone were put around his neck and he were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter into life maimed than with two hands go into Gehenna, into the unquenchable fire. And if your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter into life crippled than with 2 feet to be thrown into Gehenna. And if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Better for you to enter into the kingdom of God with one eye than with 2 eyes to be thrown into Gehenna, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can you make it salty again? Have salt among yourself and be at peace with each other. A good Sunday to all. Today's Gospel presents John, the son of Zebedee, who comes to Jesus and says, "We saw one who expelled demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he cannot use your name because that belongs to us." This is what John, the evangelist, son of Zebedee, says. And to understand the reaction and then the answer that Jesus will give to John, it is worth saying a word about this apostle, about this disciple. John received a very unfriendly name from Jesus. His and his brother James are called Boanerges, which means sons of thunder. Why has Jesus given them this nickname? Because they were very aggressive, always ready to discuss, to unleash hurricanes, fanatics, fundamentalists. We will meet these two again in other Sunday readings when they address Jesus and they want to have the first positions in the kingdom that the Master is about to begin in the world. They expected glory, honor, successes, and Luke recalls in chapter 9 when they passed through Samaria, and the Samaritans do not want to receive them. It is always these two who ask Jesus, "We must do like Elijah, invoke fire from heaven to burn them all." We understand then who this John is and what kind of personality he has. It is he who addresses Jesus and says, "Here is a competition that we do not like. There are some who invoke your name, and that cannot be." What does it mean to invoke the name of a great character? The healers of antiquity were used to invoking the name of some famous personage or pronouncing the name of angels or demons to give efficacy to their exorcisms. And so, they gave effectiveness to their practices. In Israel, the most invoked name was that of Solomon because he was considered the protector of all those who cultivated the mysteries of knowledge. And now, some of these healers were using even the name of Jesus because Jesus had become famous in those days. In other words, the exorcists, to cast out demons, used many names, including Jesus. And John says this should not be done because Jesus belongs to us. We have them, this person who is doing good. A little later we will say a few words about what these demons are. I've said it many times already, but it is worth repeating it so as not to get confused with certain concepts. So we have here a dangerous rival who is doing a good thing, but John says, he who does not have our authorization to invoke the name of Jesus and therefore to expel demons cannot do that. It is interesting, the Greek verb that is used, ekuluomen, which is imperfect. So it is not that they have prevented it, but that they tried by all means without achieving it. It is interesting the context in which the evangelist Mark placed this episode, because if we go back a page and we find that the disciples who have received from Jesus the power, the only power that Jesus has given to his disciples, the word exousia in Greek. And these terms is used only to indicate the power that Jesus gives his disciples to drive out demons, to fight against the forces of evil. What had happened in a short time before? It happened that the disciples could not put into practice this power that Jesus had given them because it had happened that a father had introduced his son to the disciples who were not able to expel the demon from that deaf-mute child. Actually, he was an epileptic child. Let us see the reasons why they could not expel the demon. And the reason is that they themselves were possessed by a demon. What kind of demon was it? Again, it was the demon of greatness, of power. It was not like the demon that Peter had when Jesus said to him, "You are Satan because you think according to the criterion of the evil one, the criteria of the world." Now it is not just Peter. All of them are animated by these demons. That is the desire to dominate over others. And this devil is very dangerous because it is about community protagonism that then leads to fanaticism, to think that they are the only ones capable of doing good. Fanaticism is born of group pride, which is a veiled and dangerous form of relegation on himself. Let us also say that group fanaticism is more subtle and dangerous because it assumes the aspect of zeal that way they hide this pride because they do something for a cause. This group pride is present also today in our Christian communities, and it is exactly what has happened with the group of disciples and with John. Let's study the groups and movements within the Christian community, and I say it with all the words and letters. Many people individually are exquisitely good, very coherent, also with the life they lead. They are very good. But as a group, they often end up being fanatics. They think that they are the only ones that have adhered to Christ, and that are capable of an authentic Christian life. So it ends up in fanaticism, exactly what happened with the disciples of Jesus. John says, "We saw some who expel demons in your name, and we forbid them." They forbade doing good, because this is what it means to drive out demons. Identifying the following of Jesus with our following exposes us to an infinite number of risks. James, like John, revealed the condition of being the only and undisputed depositories of the good. And they felt disgusted and outraged by the fact that someone could do something good without belonging to their group. What is this power to expel demons about? I've said it many times, it is about doing good, humanizing people. We have two forces in us. One that leads us to be generous, to do good, to build peace, to love, reconciliation, to be welcoming servants to others. This is the force that comes from the Spirit of God, from the divine filiation, a force within us that leads us to behave like sons and daughters of God, to behave like our Father in heaven. But also within us there are many forces that take away from these attitudes. These are the forces that destroy the human that is in us. When we say humans, it's what characterizes us as people, and is the divine that is in each one of us, this DNA that makes us sons and daughters of the Father in heaven. But there are also forces of death, pride, which then guides us to struggle, violence, and even war, jealousy, the arrogance of power, of owning. Think, for example, of the force that some feel inside that is uncontrollable for gaming, uncontainable, the pathology of the uncontrollable passions for gaming, for example. We have met people who are possessed by this force that leads them uncontrollable to behave in that way, and they ruin their life and the life of their family. Some want to expel these demons by taking these people back to the exorcist. It is not the exorcist who healed them with holy water. These are the forces that oppose to the Spirit of Christ, to the Spirit that is our divine life, our divine filiation. So, how are these demons expelled? Jesus has given us the power to expel them. It is His word that expels them. It is prayer, the encounter with God, the sacraments, the encounter with Christ. And when we receive the strength of this Spirit, these forces that dehumanize us are expelled. Then the question, who is it that expels these demons? Are they only those who belong to the church, or any person who allows himself to be moved by the Spirit of Christ? Because every person, and all our sons and daughters of God, have received, when he was conceived at birth, have received that similarity with God, this DNA divine. Therefore, any person who allows himself or herself to be moved by this Spirit drives out demons, does good. The disciples are conditioned by the mentality that saw the Messiah as a successful winner, and they wanted to be the only ones staying with this group. It is jealousy that makes them see this situation as dangerous. See rivals, even in those who do good. What is Jesus' response? Do not stop them. He who does a miracle in my name cannot then speak ill of me. Here, the Greek word term dynamis is used, this force that derives from the power of the Spirit. What does Jesus say to the disciples? Rejoice whenever you see that the demons are expelled. Anyone who does good is on our side. The problem is that we do not like to hear about the good that others do because we do not accept voluntarily the lessons of honesty, loyalty, nonviolence, love, hospitality, tolerance. We do not accept it instinctively because we think that we are the only possessors of good. But Jesus tells us that anyone animated by the divine spirit, which is given to all, anyone who lets himself or herself be moved by the spirit that does good is one of us. What does the ecclesial community do? It is not that she considers herself the only entity that does good, but Jesus wanted to put her as a city on a hill, a city that everyone can see and contemplate. It must be like an exhibition, a showcase, where people can contemplate the wonderful works that are a product of adherence to the gospel. Because those who accept the gospel, those who accept the proposal of life and humanity that Jesus does, must be people that produce joy, love, dialogue, welcome, reconciliation. But the church is not the only place to see and contemplate these wonders. This germinates in everyone who lets be guided by the Spirit of the divine DNA that every person has received. And in fact, Jesus says, who is not against us, it is in our favor. What discriminates is the good of the person. He who does good to the people, he who builds love, is certainly of ours, because he lets himself be moved by the Spirit of Christ. Next evangelist text places a series of sayings of the Lord. The first, anyone who gives you a cup of water to drink because you belong to Christ will not be without reward. What does it mean? For us, offering a glass of water does not require much, but in Jesus' time, give a glass of water. Actually, we must place ourselves there, in the desert. When a person is tired and asks for shelter, giving a glass of water means receiving and protecting this person who needs to be welcomed and helped. The text says, anyone who gives you a cup of water to drink because you belong to Christ. So, giving a glass of water means welcoming. And it is very beautiful, this gesture of the glass of water, because it is not given by a Christian but by an unbeliever to the Christian. It is the acceptance of the disciples from someone who does not belong to the group of disciples. What will be the reward? The reward is that this gesture of love, this first gesture that is a meeting between two people that surely have different conceptions of life, but there is the acceptance, not on the part of the Christian for those who are not, but it is a non-Christian who receives a disciple. This act of love that apparently is a simple thing, simple value, will not be without reward. That is, it will not remain unfruitful. It will build a relationship of faith that will be the beginning of a dialogue. Every gesture that favors encounter and communication between people is beautiful, come where it may. If it comes from an unbeliever, it is already beginning between two who are already children of God, two who have received the Spirit of the same Father. The second saying of the Lord, if anyone scandalizes one of these little ones who believe in me, it is the threat of those who scandalize the little ones. These are not the children. We already heard last Sunday the paidion, the servant. Here, they are not the paidion, they are the mikroi, the little ones. And here, by little ones, we understand the weak people in the faith, those who have just begun to listen to the gospel and begin to follow this light of Christ and can be scandalized by those who are already disciples. The context in which Mark places this threat of Jesus is against those who scandalize those who are beginners, who are just beginning to take the first steps in following Jesus. The context is that of the ambition of the disciples. The ambition of the disciple within the ecclesial community that can take away those who are taking the first steps. And this is a scandal that Jesus condemns in the strongest way. What scandalizes? They are the conflicts, the divisions, the schisms in the church that are always directed by pride, the frenzy of power, the will to impose on others, to show off. And to this day, these scandals keep the children away from the church. It is the unedifying spectacle of the competition and even of the intrigue to occupy the first position, to obtain privilege. It is an unedifying spectacle of the race to look for honorific title, the kissing of hands, the inclinations, and these are the farces that are still present in the Christian community that scandalize and alienate the little ones. They are not accompanied to know more deeply the gospel. Let us bear in mind the possibility of scandal. I think all of us will be asked how we have responded to the scandals inside the church. We listen with pain that the media tell us these days about the wrong deeds done by the disciples, those who belong to the church and should know that they are in the showcase from where only good should come out. I think we have responded to these objections by saying that it is the human aspect that is present in the ecclesial community and that it is inevitable that it be so. Yeah, but surely we have also noticed that people are not convinced with this answer. Why? Because people expect that those who belong to the Christian community, those who are disciples of Christ, they expect a different life because they are, as Jesus said, like a city placed on the mountain top. And it is expected that from them emanate a life that is different from the other mortals. This is why Jesus is worried that scandalous images come out of the church. And the scandal of which he is referring here is the desire to have power, of not being disciples, servants of others. Inside the church, where one should be generous, cheerful at the service of others, people find some who are devoured by vanity. The threat of Jesus, it would be better for him to have a millstone tied around his neck and thrown down into the sea. It refers to the death by drowning that was considered by the Jews the most infamous torture because it was impossible to bury the corpse. And if the corpse was not buried, the rabbi said that at the time of the resurrection, these people could not enter into life. Another saying of Jesus, of the Lord: if your hand is for you an occasion of sin, cut it off. It is better to enter maimed in life than with both hands go to hell, to the inextinguishable fire. Let us clear up immediately the issue of Gehenna, because some believe that if the hand is not cut off, the person will not end up in the fire of hell for all eternity. This is a fire the fire that doesn't go out. This interpretation is far from the meaning who have the words of Jesus at the time. What was Gehenna? You can see it in the image that I put on my back. This was Gehenna. It was the valley that revolved around the city of Jerusalem in the southwestern part of the city. This Gehenna was the garbage dump of the city where day and night they burned the waste of the city, therefore a nauseating place. What meaning did the rabbis give to this expression to throw a person to a life in Gehenna? Those who follow certain behaviors throw their lives in the dumpster. This was the meaning of that expression. Now, as you can see, Gehenna is a pleasant park, as you can see in the image at my back. But as I said, in Jesus' time, it was an impure place. Even today, we can see tombs that were excavated. It was a valley where these graves existed, and especially it was a cursed place by the prophets. The part of where Gehenna meets Kidron was the place that had been cursed by the prophets, and today we find the monastery of Saint Onofrius, a place where tradition says that Judas hanged himself. It was a cursed place for the prophets because human sacrifices were made there. Children were offered to Moloch, a pagan idol. All this explains how Gehenna was used as the image of filth. What was the point of rabbinical expression? But okay, let us also say something else. That there in the background at the pool of Siloam was the place where all the impure activities were performed, nauseating, tanneries, cheese making, etc. In fact, the south gate of the city of Jerusalem always had disparaging names like door of the dunghill. It was used to throw away the waste, the garbage, and the manure. And the rabbis use this expression, be careful because certain behaviors of life lead to the destruction of one existence. They are not talking about hell in the afterlife. No, they're referring to the destruction of life today. Hell was invented by Christians. Jesus never spoke of hell. When Jesus talks about Gehenna, Jesus uses this very hard and very effective image. It puts on guard about the scandal that comes from within of the person. Stay tuned because if you do not make certain decisions, although costly, though painful, you risk destroying your life. And Jesus uses the image of the hand that is cut, and the foot that is cut, and the eye that is plucked out. What is the meaning of this? The hand represents action, the dishonest works. And here it is about cutting the hands off, the hands that steal, the hands that commit violence. That is, block these actions if you do not want to ruin your own life. But the hand, and also the finger pointing, the arrogant attitude of the one who raises his voice and imposes his own will, also this has to be cut out. You have to cut these behaviors that make you impure, distant from others, like one who is down into hell. No one gets close to those who have these behaviors that these hands operate to carry out these actions. Then the foot that scandalizes. The foot indicates the direction, the options, the orientation of life. Then there are the eye that is plucked out. The eye indicates greed for accumulation, pleasure, dreams of greatness, And these eyes are extracted. The arrogant looks of those who later reveal greed for money. Pluck out this eye, otherwise you ruin your life. Also the envious eyes, the eyes full of suspicion that create unsustainable situations even within the Christian community. They are those who always see evil everywhere and murmur. This eye must be plucked out so that you can see beautiful things. Necessary cuts are then indicated even if they are painful. The most immediate reference is the control of sexuality, although not only this. You have to cut others as well if you do not want to ruin your own life and the lives of others. Therefore, Jesus is not talking about hell. At the end of our life, God welcomes us all into his home. This life is where we risk ruining our life and throwing it into hell. Let us be attentive, because for the people of this world, those who make these options, those who make these cuts, can be considered crazy. One does not take advantage of opportunities, of joy, or the possibility of enjoying life, of accepting everything that is pleasing to the eyes. They are considered disabled persons. But Jesus says that they are the necessary cuts to be an authentic person. Then he talks about the worm that does not die. What is that? The worm is the process of putrefaction towards which those who abandon themselves to this debauchery are directed. The decomposition of self, the self-destruction of those who make choices opposed to Christ and the gospel. The fire that does not go out. And the Baptist said that everything would be burned. And Paul mentions a fire that will burn that part of our life that does not correspond to the gospel. Here it refers to the destruction of the life that takes place in this life, in this fire of Gehenna, that throws one existence into these proposals that are those of the world. Jesus uses strong words, but this insistence of the seriousness in our life is timely. It is not the announcement of the condemnation of the reprobate, but the call to the importance of building a life according to the Spirit, according to our DNA of sons and daughters of God. The last expression that Jesus uses, everyone will be seasoned by fire. We know what fire is. The fire is that of the Spirit of Christ, that of Pentecost. This is the only fire that God knows. Even Jesus says, I came to bring fire into the world, and what I wanted is that the world be a fire. This fire is the spirit of the divine filiation, which must be nourished so that it expands in the hearts of all. This is the salt that he has given us. What is the salt of the Christian? What is it that characterizes it? It is this fire. It is love. It is anti-ambition. The evil one can be identified with the desire to dominate over others. The salt of Christianity and what characterizes it is the opposite. It's the service to the brothers and sisters. This is the salt that gives favor to the Christian community. Jesus concludes by saying, salt is good. It is what makes us recognizable, and it is the service to others. If this is missing, the Christian community loses its identity. You have salt, Jesus says, concluding this text, and be at peace with others. Peace can be born only from this evangelical salt that is the service to the brothers and sisters. The salt with which God has salted the world by sending Christ. And if one renounces ambition to the desire to pretend to be at the service of one another, peace will succeed. Past peace will be assured to the community. Any other effort to build peace without letting service appeal to the brothers and sisters is a project that will not succeed. I wish everyone a good Sunday and a good week.